Welcome to Ouch. Was that a ghost? This podcast may contain graphic material, which some listeners may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised.
Help me.
Now that we covered that, here's your host, Liz.
Welcome back to Ouch, Was That a Ghost? Today, joining us are the authors of the book of Who Are They and What Are They Up To? Welcome, Leslie and Stephen Shaw. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Oh, thanks. It's actually, it's Who They Are and What They're Up To by Leslie and Stephen Shaw. So,
okay.
Sorry to have to correct.
No.
And, thanks so much for having us. This is great.
Thanks for coming on.
Well, and thank you for reading it. Sometimes we're talking to hosts that don't know anything about the book, so it's nice to have somebody who you already read it and likes it. She likes it. Everybody.
I have a fair idea where we're coming from, which is nice. So yeah.
Going into it, I believe there's something, but I'm very skeptical at the same time.
That's
and
fine.
Going into it, I didn't think I'd like it nearly as much as I did, but I do appreciate how you put a lot of factual evidence behind everything, behind all your theories.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like you were just throwing things out and just being like, believe me.
Yeah, we're not rabbit hole people at all.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I have a science background, and I'm just and I came from a very conservative British family, so
right.
No, we believe in science, and science is good, and facts are good.
Yeah, and frequently when we're on podcasts, we are kind of giving our theories, and we can't show at the same time all this huge weight of facts that we have to back it up. And the book, I believe, is well referenced in the back, and I try to be very careful about providing our sources of information for every assertion I made, or we made, Thank you.
Yes.
As I was going through it, I was writing down questions to try to do this as like an interview style.
Sure.
And even then, you pretty much answered every single question I wrote down. I was sitting there like crossing them off. You were like, well, about human dissection. And I'm like, well, what about it? And then as I read on, it told all about it, about the different types of aliens. Same thing. I kept crossing them all out. So I didn't really end up with any questions to ask you.
The reason that we wrote it was our personal experiences, and we only talk about them right at the beginning of the book, though. It's in the preface part of our book. We talk about our personal experiences a bit, just to give people a reference for where we're coming from, why we believe the things we believe, and why we started our research. Stephen really started his research years and years ago, but as far as me, I saw my first UFO in 2005, and that was about the moment that I thought, we should write a book about this, because once you see your first one, you can't unsee it, right? You can't go back to that place of happy ignorance where you can believe it's not real or it's not happening, right? And Stephen has had experiences all his life, and he'd been telling me about them, but I only about 98% believed him, right? You can't completely believe it until you see it for yourself. And then the day happened. We were driving from Joshua Tree to Yucca Valley at night, and I looked up ahead, and in the sky was a white ball of light. And at first I thought, okay, it's a plane maybe flying into Palm Springs Airport. But then I stared at it, and it didn't have the other lights that planes always have.
The running
lights, the little blinking lights on either side. And it was just the single white ball. It seemed to just hover, too. And as we were driving towards it, so it did seem to get brighter and brighter. I'm not 100% sure if it was moving towards us as we were moving towards it, but it did brighten, and then suddenly it shot away over the northern horizon and gone in less than a quarter of a second, I would say.
Yes.
It was just, when I think about it, about 20,000 miles an hour is about the speed it seemed to me. Definitely in the tens of thousands of miles per hour. And it instantly took off at the speed, too. It didn't slowly ramp up to that speed and then gone. It instantly took off at this hypersonic speeds, they call them. That's one of the signatures of a UFO. When, a light in the sky can be many things, but when it suddenly takes off at 20,000 miles an hour, then it can't be anything else. That's a UFO. Or if it descends into the ocean or flies up out of the ocean and into the sky and then up into space, we call it transmedium travel.
USOs, yeah. Mm-hmm.
In that case, now you're looking at a UFO or a UAP or a USO or whatever they want to call it at the time. And so that was my first. And once you see it, like I say, you can't unsee it. And we spent the next 18 years trying to explain it.
Yeah, mostly for ourselves. And then like a couple of years ago, we decided to actually truly get around to writing a book. But, we were accumulating evidence, research along the way.
And reading.
I've read certain books, like some of Hancock's books and Bramley's books and Cramo's books more than once. And so, like I say, for myself, my experiences go back to my being 3 years of age, where I would be visited in the middle of the night by this little being that would, was invisible, that I couldn't see, but would jump on my stomach and my chest kind of playfully while I was in bed. And I didn't find it menacing or scary. I just found it odd. But I grew up in a family, too, that told me that we had this family protector, this family spirit guy called Old Glegley. Been following the family around for at least 3 generations, first from Germany, and then into England, and then into California. And it's personally followed me, these strange occurrences, to 6 different houses so far. So this has been something that's followed me throughout my whole conscious life. So anyways, fast forwarding a little bit, when I was about 10 years old, I was sleeping in a top of a bunk bed. My brother, being 6 years younger than me, was 4 years old, and I was awakened in the middle of the night by this strange sound that I didn't recognize. I knew it wasn't the dog, so being curious, I got up and I was tiptoeing down the hallway, and my heart was pounding and my eyes were dilated and my breathing was elevated. I was scared. I didn't know what I was going to see. It was a weird sound I was hearing in the living room. Just as I'm about ready to turn to the living room, I just go blank. And next thing I know, a few hours later, I'm back in my bunk, nicely tucked in, and have no memory as far as what happened on the way down the hallway.
And that's the signature for the alien abduction phenomenon.
Big one.
Yeah, frequently the family, and this happened, I heard the story again and again from family members, where they would see something bizarre and it would frighten them. They would have, their heart would be pounding and they'd be in a fear reaction, and suddenly they black out and can remember nothing else. One night, Stephen's brother Philip actually saw a gray alien in his room.
In a totally different house.
Yeah, and then blacked out. And that was when we started really comparing notes about then and realized that this was the phenomenon that we were dealing with. The family spirit guide was actually a gray alien named Old Glegley.
He actually saw a tall gray this is like over about a 3 or 4 night period in 1982 when he was 16 years of age. And in the house that my parents and I were building, my dad was a cabinet maker and I was a cabinet maker at the time, so we were building our own house in the woods in Sonora. So we had a year-round creek on the property, and it started out the first night where he was awakened by these 2 very bright white lights outside of his bedroom window, and his window faced the forest and the creek. There was no roads there at all.
No roads or houses in the distance.
And he looked, and his being kind of he ended up being a draftsman and an engineer, so he was like trying to figure it out logically, and then he just blacks out. The next night, he was awakened by this scrabbling sound underneath his bed, and he just thought, oh, it's just one of the cats. So he basically reached down to kind of pet it, and instead of petting a cat, a hand grabbed his wrist, and of course he wasn't expecting that, and he blacks out.
And of course he has a terror reaction when that happens, right? And
definitely.
A terror reaction or a fear reaction, you don't just drift back off to sleep, right?
You pull back your hand and you're awake.
And you're terrified,
and
right?
My brother was 6'3" and built.
He was a big guy, yeah.
He's a big guy, so not a lot of people or things scared him. Then the next night, a night or two later, he was awakened by this, what he described as a tall gray, about 6 foot or bigger, that was just standing in his doorway and looking at him, and then
he blacks out
again. So we kind of knew at that point that we were dealing with something.
We think that, because he found somebody actually finally saw a gray, that we figured out what the phenomenon was. Because with it kind of and sometimes sounds like a haunting more, but it travels from home to home, so it's followed the family everywhere.
Country to country, too.
Yeah, from England to Germany, from Germany to England to California. It's definitely a phenomenon that follows the family rather than is anchored to any one place, for sure.
How do they follow you? Do you think it's like a sensing the DNA type thing, or they're actually watching from afar to see what you're doing?
We do think it's genetic and DNA, and we do think that they...
And they put trackers in people.
Right, yes. We accidentally found that there was a tracker in me on my right deltoid, and just below my shoulder on my right-hand side, that was found because I had to have major reconstructive surgery because I almost lost the function of my right arm.
Don't go into the whole story, but
in an accident.
But that's a well-documented phenomenon where they put these little tiny trackers in people that kind of look like rice.
Looks like a rice grain, and it was nowhere near where the actual break occurred in my arm. So one of these days I'm going to get somebody who's got good enough technology to fully blow up that X-ray, because I wasn't able to get the original X-ray, which I saw it on with the radiologist, but I have gotten DVD copies. So I want to get somebody who's got technology where they can blow it up enough
to open that file. We're having some trouble with that.
No, we can open the file, but I just can't blow it up enough with my current technology. So,
anyway, but the phenomenon is documented well, that they put trackers in people. But how they find them originally, I think just kind of, they do a lot of abduction, and then when they find a genetic line of people that they like, because it's not what people used to think. The abduction phenomenon, the theories about it when we started doing our research were that aliens were just curious about us. They just wanted to take samples for scientific research and development, from a cross section of humanity, a bunch of different cross section of humanity. But that we quickly realized that is not what is actually happening. What's actually happening is that the phenomenon is almost entirely Caucasian. Even though we only make up 16% of the population, Caucasians make up about 90%. A little more than 90%
around about that, yes,
of the abductee population. So they're after a particular strain of DNA, and we go into the theories as to why that is in our book. But then we also learned it was actually mostly from the work of Professor Jacobs that we reference in our book. He did 10,000 hypnotic regressions on abductees, and in his long career. And then so that's a big enough pool to actually start pulling data from. He found that 1,100 out of these 10,000 people being abducted were women who were taken and impregnated, and then 4 months later they're taken again, and the fetus is removed. And then sometimes years later they're taken again and then introduced to their hybrid offspring. And the offspring frequently, their eyes are too large for normal humans, and their cheeks are pointy, their chins are pointy. It's like they're a cross between the Greys and
some of these women
humans.
too. This has happened 2, 3, 4 times too.
Yes.
And of course, with now we have things such as ultrasounds and obstetrics that have caught up. They can actually prove, and the obstetricians are just flummoxed from the standpoint that you were pregnant, it was 5 centimeters, your fetus was 5 centimeters, which seems to be about the size of a baseball, is when they seem to be interested in taking the developing fetus. And so they can say that, listen, as far as I can tell, you were never pregnant.
It doesn't behave like a normal miscarriage.
Yeah, it says you didn't miscarry because I know you're pregnant, and everything was taken, everything necessary for a fetus to continue growing.
It's like they vacuum out the womb or something. But what they carefully do is remove the entire placenta, so that when they transplant the fetus into these tanks that we believe they grow them in, they can finish the growth cycle, in these tanks that we've heard of. In the Dulce papers, a security guard discovered a level to an underground base that he wasn't supposed to be going to, and he saw hundreds of these tanks filled with either gray aliens or hybrid kind of beings. So we believe that these tanks are real, and that's where they're taking these fetuses to finish their development.
You theorize that a lot of humans are working underground in these bunkers. Where do you think that
that's a good question. I did 6 years in the military, of 80 to 86, so I know there's a lot of secrecy that goes on. Okay, and it's not that hard to keep things quiet. I mean, it's not that hard to intimidate human beings, or to like secret them away to doing specific projects,
or force them into silence, especially if they're military
personnel. Or to compartmentalize things. You don't necessarily have to be underground in the base to have something you're working on that is a part of alien technology, but you have no clue that it is, because it's like working on an assembly line. You make just part of something, or you're examining a part of something. As far as like us working with the our cousins, as we call them, that's not too far of a stretch to imagine at all. Dulce is fairly well known. The
Yes,
Indians,
that's where the vats are. Let me tell her about it. It's,
well, the Indians also in that area have been seeing this going on for thousands of years.
Yeah, the Hickory tribe there has been seeing them. I think that's how they pronounce it. Gacilla. But the people there have been seeing the mesa opening up and UFOs coming in and out of it for hundreds of years. And so we surmise there's a base there. And it's called the Dulce Air Force Base.
Yes.
In UFO circles. But it's supposed to be a secret base, and it's underground. It goes 7 levels down, and it's supposed to be right next to the Archuleta Mesa, which is where the Native Americans in the area have been seeing these UFOs. And the underground base goes down 7 levels. The top 5 levels are supposed to be human personnel only, and so that these people on these levels don't need to know that there's a joint alien base going on, right? But the bottom 2 levels, with only high security clearance access, are for joint military / alien bases. And, it's not just us saying this is happening. For instance, the Alaska MUFON talks about Mount Hayes as being a military / alien base as well. And the Black Pyramid in Alaska, have you heard about that?
Yes, I have.
That's supposed to be yet another alien / military base. So at certain clearances, they're working with our government. Only at the very highest clearances, though.
Yeah. Even the president doesn't have access. Bill Clinton famously...
We think frequently they don't, yeah.
Clinton was trying to, with John Podesta, he was trying to get to the bottom of the whole alien thing. Says, well, I said, I don't know what type of clearance I need to have, but I guess I don't have high enough clearance because I can't find out.
Yeah, seems like they tend to hide it from presidents that openly talk about going to disclose it.
There's no need for them to disclose it right now. Look what it would do to religions around the world and the stock markets. And we are xenophobic as a race, human beings. We don't want to know certain things. We don't want to actually believe that we're not the top dogs, we're and we're looking in the wrong place all the time. We're always looking, we're looking up into the sky instead of looking beneath our feet. That's what our research shows, at
right.
least.
As soon as we started researching it, that was another thing that didn't make any sense. We discovered that worldwide, UFOs are seen about 10,000 times a year, every year, and just in the U.S., the average is 3,200 a year reportings, and in 2019 it jumped drastically up to 6,200. And we think that reporting is somewhere around 10%. So that means what we're really seeing is them 100,000 times a year, every year, for many, many, many years, maybe thousands of years. So once you look at it like that, you just cannot believe any longer that they're coming here through wormholes or via interdimensional travel or time travel, or
a lot of the pop theories that are out there.
Yeah, or from any incredible distances.
And also their motivation, why are they so interested in us,
Yeah, why? And that kept coming up too. It's like, why are they taking Caucasians, particularly? And we began to realize that they are not taking samples. What they're doing is like they're harvesting a product. I make an analogy in the book about a cow. A farmer has a cow and he puts it out in the field to eat grass so it'll make milk, right? But every morning he abducts the cow from the field and takes it into the barn and sucks all the milk out of it and then puts it back out there to make more. We think this is what's going on. They keep taking the same person in a family again and again and again and again through their lives. Then they start taking their children, and they'll start taking the grandchildren. It's like they find a DNA strain that meets their particular criteria, and they put trackers in the family and they keep an eye on that family. And we think in some cases they protect them, almost like a farmer does protect his cow, like a prize animal that you're getting a useful product out of. You might also protect that creature from harm. And we believe that that's what kind of Old Gleggly is, because Old Gleggly is both a protector and is preying on the family. And is taking the DNA and the genetic material from the family.
And has appeared to a number of members of the family, including even non-members. My uncle, who was married to my mom's older sister, his life was saved by Old Gleggly when he was stationed in Ceylon in the Royal Air Force just after World War II. He told me this story on a couple different occasions. And again, no-nonsense guy, grew up in wartime England, and it was interesting. Tall figure awakes him when he's billeted in a 40-man tent out there in Sri Lanka, which was, Ceylon, and he was said, you have to get up now. You're going to be attacked and maybe killed. Rebels are coming. And then the figure just disappears, and he just gets up out of his bunk. And just gets out of the tent, and like a minute or two later, rebels came in with machetes and knives and some guns, and several guys were killed. And he swore up and down, says, "No, Old Gleggly just told me," and he knew it was Old Gleggly somehow.
He saved my life,
And my grandmother and other people had also seen Old Gleggly, and I was approached by, I believe, who was Old Gleggly when I was 18.
Yeah,
which is also in the book.
Yeah, this is another cluster of incidents that happened all in 1 week to the whole family actually was involved. Again, why we think that well, anyway, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I used to chalk it up to, growing up as a kid, that we had a family spirit guide. And this is something that you just don't tell your friends growing up, in elementary school, because they think, number one, you're living in a haunted house, or you're lying, or you're crazy, or just something. You don't tell them things that have happened that, they sound crazy, all right? So, anyways, to shorten everything up, this happened when 1979 in January. My dad came into breakfast in the morning. He told me that his closet doors had opened and closed on him during the night, and I just said, "Dad, you're making it up." But anyway, so next night I was reading a book that I was enjoying. I gave it to my dad about 9 o'clock at night to read, and half an hour later he came into my room with this puzzled look on his face, and he said, "Stephen, I must be hearing things." So I went in there, and there was this silver bell that was being rung in the wall, in the 2x4 wall, and I heard it, and my dad said, "You hear that?" I said, "Yes, silver bell." Got my sister, and she heard the same thing too. Turned out the next day when we called my mom, who was living at the house we were building up in Sonora, California, 350 miles away, she said that she said, I got this phone call that Philip said that the phone didn't ring, but there's this bell. I heard this bell, so I picked up the phone, and there was a voice on the other side, a male voice saying, "I am the invisible Beachy," or something to that extent. My brother said the
we
phone
still don't know what that is.
No, my brother said the phone didn't ring, but this was right at the exact same time. That was weird. The next night, I was sleeping in my bedroom, and I was awakened by a whizzing sound in the air, like whew, whew, whew. I thought, whatever, somebody had a fan on, or it was an insect or something, and I kind of looked down the hallway, went back to bed, and was getting back to sleep, and then the foot of my bed starts to be pushed. 2 distinct, gentle shoves from the base. Living in Southern California, thought, well, maybe it's an earthquake. Continued to try to go back to sleep, and they shoves twice, harder. Then a third time, even harder, and I'm starting to get worried at this point, okay? I know it's not an earthquake. Then I get 3 distinct taps on my right shoulder in my deltoid area, which is, interestingly, where they found that tracking device, okay? Somebody's tapping with index finger. And then at this point, I said, okay, I want to confront whatever this is. So I whirled around, and I said, what? And I could sense there was something there, but I couldn't see it. And then I black out. The next night, I decide I'm not going to sleep in my bedroom. So I decided to sleep in the living room, and I just wore my work clothes from the day before. And I woke about 5:30 in the morning, and I know I was awake because I looked at my piano, thought about what music I was going to play. I heard the little fountain in the other room, and so I was awake, I was alert, but it's too early to get up. From the front door, about 25 feet from behind me, this being, about 6 to 7 feet tall, blue-white being, slender, just floats over to me. The whole room is filled with this intense blue-white light. It stops my right side. Whole right side of my body becomes immobile. Just basically like it turned off the nervous system. Not in an unpleasant way, but just, I couldn't move. It bent down to my right side and whispered in my ear, "Hi, Steve." in a whisper that wasn't either male or female. Okay, so part of me is thinking, oh, I get to meet the family spirit guide, old Glegley, that I've heard about since being a kid. But the other part of me is saying, dude, you can't move. Okay, it doesn't matter what you do, you can't move. And so I'm 50-50, about I want to look, I want to actually see it directly in its face.
Yeah, it's like half
and
scared and half excited, right?
I was 50-50 as far as that
went.
That's
how he describes
and
it.
It went on for a period of, 10-15 seconds, and then it backtracked and left out through the front door, taking the blue-white light with it. And then I can't remember, honestly. I thought that I remembered, but I can't remember.
Yeah, we see in the book, actually, that he got up and told his father. But then later, when he was trying to regress and remember that experience in more detail, he realized he has no clear memory of what happened right afterwards.
The only thing I know is clear is 11:30 that day. It was lunchtime, so I went to go get some lunch, and I reached into my right-hand side pocket, pulled out the coins that were and put them on the table, and all the coins were magnetized. And it was the weirdest thing. I could pick up the coins from whatever spot. I could pick them up with each other. My dad could do the same thing. This is 6 hours after I was immobilized. And so we both looked at each other and said, what the heck? Because everything that was happening seemed to be getting more intense, right? Mm-hmm. So the last thing that happened was that I have no memory of, but my dad does, was that he was awakened in the middle of the night, and he looked down the hallway he was still in bed, he looked down the hallway towards my bedroom, and my bedroom was filled with blue-white light, just a solid wall of blue-white light. And he said to himself, I'm going to get up and take a look at what this is. And a voice came in his head and said, Jeffrey, just go back to sleep, relax, everything's okay. And then he just went back to sleep. For so many years, I just thought, I just wasn't making any connection with aliens. I was thinking it had something to do with a family spirit guide or something along those lines.
Who manifests as a blue-white electric being of some kind, that can magnetize coins in your pocket.
Yeah, and it started to make no sense as I got a little older and looked into it. So
we started researching, like I said, and Stephen saw his first UFOs young, like at 10, but then he saw a USO in 2004 come up out of the ocean at Malibu.
With a witness.
Do some insane movements and shoot off north again at thousands of miles an hour.
What are the distinctions between UFO, UAP, and USO?
Well, when they're underwater, they're called USOs, unidentified submerged objects. So,
okay.
But then it came from being a USO up into being a UFO and did its crazy maneuvers. When we say crazy maneuvers, we're talking about moving in impossible ways. Like when our aircraft want to make a U-turn, we have to slowly bank around in a big U shape. But these craft, they can turn on a V and at full speed without slowing down at these angular turns at all. That's another sign that you're looking at a UFO.
And they're soundless, of course, too.
And frequently, almost always they're silent.
Soundless, yeah.
The only time they're described as not silent is when people say they experience a hum sound that is almost more felt than heard. And frequently people who experience that are too close. And UFO witnesses have been known to get electromagnetic radiation burns on their bodies. So we believe that in the ancient days, when these creatures were pretending to be our gods, they were using aircraft. Like the story of Ezekiel, he sees a fiery chariot coming down before he's taken up into the sky. And the same thing with Enoch and
the Yellow Emperor.
A few other different prophets from the biblical times and from the old days. So they used to use good old-fashioned rocketry like we do now, but we think since then they have they're now using nuclear power somehow to power their ship. And that's why we never see any exhaust coming off of them. That's why they're silent, except unless you're really close, then you hear the hum of the reactor probably.
They also have a way of canceling inertia too. That's why.
Yeah.
And they probably a lot of these UFOs that people are seeing, the white ones especially, are probably more the equivalent of a very advanced drone.
Yeah, the Red Rippers. Yeah.
That.
In the last summer, a whistleblower named David Grush and 2 pilots, retired
U.S. Navy pilots.
Navy pilots. I think the Red Rippers are Navy.
Yeah, they're both Navy.
But Fravor was definitely Navy. But Ryan Graves, was from the East Coast. And the East Coast of the squadron of planes called the Red Rippers, they fly out of a base called Oceana in Virginia. And they are the ones that, this squadron of planes is the ones that took the video of gimbal video and the Go Fast video. Are you familiar with those? Those famous videos that were released?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Yeah,
So-
most people are these days.
Yeah, most people have seen those. What Fravor rather was it was Graves. What Graves was describing them seeing, it's 15 foot in diameter, and it looks like a crystal or glass sphere, but inside is like a cube, a little black cube or dark gray cube. I see these in a lot of videos. I've seen exactly this. It looks like a little a white crystal orb up in the sky, or a silver orb up in the sky, but it looks like there's something inside of it spinning. I believe that's these cubes are inside this thing spinning, and somehow this device, we think they use them to spy on our military. And one thing we didn't know before that hearing, they talked in the hearing about that yes, we have crashed alien ships, and yes, we have dead alien bodies from these ships, and that was not news to us, because that's been knowledge to ufology circles all along.
Yeah, it's been going around since 47 at least.
But what was a surprise to me was the fact that these orbs and these tic-tac objects are following our military every single time they go out on maneuvers everywhere around the world. And this is what these pilots are reporting to each other. That was big news to me. I didn't realize they were following our military absolutely everywhere we go.
And it's also the British are reporting it, and the
Chinese and
the
the Russians.
and the Russians.
Too, yeah.
Yes, they're concerned about. They have a lot of skin in the game as far as what we've been able to. There's a very, very good reason why they are concerned about us barbarians, as they call us, playing around with nuclear weapons.
They've been reported to come and speak to people on multiple occasions about warning about nuclear weapons, haven't they?
Absolutely, they have.
Even to children, like in Zimbabwe,
Right.
trying to get the message across.
Take better care of your planet. Stop poisoning your planet. That's
poisoning
always
your
their
planet,
message when they send the message.
It's a similar message all the time.
Yeah, it's always that we're barreling down the wrong path for sure.
Kind of off topic. I don't know if I should ask it now. In the book,
Go
you
ahead.
mentioned about the pyramids generating
Power.
I forget how it was. Yeah, it was power, like hydrogen by this on this side, this on this side.
Yes.
What did you think that was powering, if you had any guess?
Well, the Egyptians, there's some evidence that shows that they had electricity. We see this because their artwork on their, on the side of their temples and stuff, there'll be a giant light bulb.
Yeah, the
and it looks like it's
light
plugged
bulb,
into
yeah.
those like Baghdad battery things look like. And there's no soot on the inside of all these carved out deep chambers way down underground. There's no soot on the walls, so they're not using torches. And the people have surmised that they've got a system of mirrors. They're shining
That's
light
been
down
debunked.
in there.
That's been debunked a long
But
time ago.
it looks like I see an electric bulb on the wall when I look at that one. Especially there's one that looks particularly like a light bulb.
You've probably seen that thing where the scientists replicated the hydrated zinc on one, and then the basically muriatic acid, and he mixes them together, and it forms basically usable hydrogen gas that will just continue to burn for as long as you want. They were using some type of microwave. They're transmitting it with the
Christopher Dunn surmised
with
that
a pressure
possible,
wave.
yeah.
With a pressure wave, probably some type of microwave
This
where
theory-
they would producing power and also to communicate too.
Possibly,
So, possibly as a communication network that
or
would be
a-
clean Iranian energy.
Or a beacon. Some theories about it that maybe had a beacon coming out of the top of the pyramid, perhaps. Where this theory comes from, it's a terrific book. I recommend it. His name is Christopher Dunn, and he wrote a book about, I think, what's it called? The Pyramid Power Plant? Power Plants.
Pyramid power plants.
After reading his book, I believe it. Makes a lot of sense. And there's proof. There's hard evidence for his theory as well. Like Stephen said, they had residue on these two
canals
that fed this chamber underneath the pyramid, and hydrochloric acid was coated on one.
Yeah, muriatic or hydrochloric acid,
and then the other was
hydrated zinc.
Hydrated zinc.
Yep.
And if you mix those two together, it produces a hydrogen gas
Yes.
that they believe was then kind of pushed or pressurized into the upper chamber, the large chamber of the pyramid. There, he feels like that the larger chamber was there to be to cause
excitement,
the excitement of the molecules of the hydrogen gas. And from there, he said, from that point, there's all kinds of uses you can make from hydrogen gas.
You can make mechanical use of the energy. There's all kinds of ways you can use mechanically.
Using it all different ways. So which one they're doing for sure, we're not sure. He surmised that he thinks they were actually creating microwaves. I think he also adheres to the beacon possible theory, that they're shooting up beacons up in the sky for triangulation of aircraft.
We know that their choice of minerals they like to use have a lot of quartz in them, like andesite and, of course, granite. And
Rose
we know the piezoelectrical effect that you get from putting pressure, depending on how big the rocks are. Like, for instance, the big negroid stone heads that are in South America, I believe it is.
No, they're at they're in Mexico.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, one is like 50 tons, and its face is carved where it's the highest density of the piezoelectric effects. So we know that
they can read it at least. We know if they.
Yeah, we know that the ancients had a very advanced way of working with rock and minerals. We know they could at least soften it. We know that they could smelt metals. I mean, that's evident with Pumapunku. The triple beveled inward layered blocks that fit together. Me having done a lot of concrete work in my life and such, all these blocks of Pumapunku, which are way above the tree line, they look like they've been poured like a concrete block we would do today. And on the back side, there's these cleats that hold them together that were basically poured metal. So they had to have on site like a smelting factory or a blast furnace combination. So they would literally pour these blocks, probably melt the material, put them in a form, and then they would cleat them together. And this is something that, it's just okay. They really knew what they were doing, and these things are so uniform in texture. I don't believe these things were cut. I think they may have been finished being cut, but they were actually poured. They look exactly the way I would pour a stepping stone or do concrete work. That's my theory on that.
And Machu Picchu is it's not quite as high, but it's pretty high elevation and very remote, and it's perched right on the edge of a chasm. So it's perched right up high on this hill, and you just go straight down to a river below, like a 1,000-foot drop. The city is actually built right on two earthquake faults and is thousands and thousands of years old, but it's fine. It hasn't been wrecked at all, That's how good the architectural skill. And we're also finding that they were built way earlier than people thought. All of the Peruvian and the Bolivian stuff, they were attributing it to the Inca, but the Inca were a Bronze Age people. They didn't have draft animals. They didn't have cranes. They didn't have anything that you could use to move these 200-ton blocks.
And plus, when the Spanish landed, they asked the Incas, how did you do this? And said, hey,
we didn't build it.
It was here.
It was already here.
And then finally, at this one of the sites, is called Carl Supe, there was some woven material, like a netting, like a grass woven material found under one of the pyramids. That there was some earthquake damage, and a big piece of this pyramid staircase thing broke off, and underneath they found this grass netting. And so they carbon date the netting, and it carbon dates to 5,000 years ago. This is like 4,500 years before the Inca.
About 4,000.
So way, way back before the Inca. These things are being built. So we now know that there's a pyramid building culture of 5,000 years ago in that region that we know virtually nothing about.
Yeah.
Almost nothing. Except that of what they've left behind,
Yeah, the dribs and drabs.
And that's one of the things. Stephen has a science background. He was he's a retired acupuncturist
and
now.
A geologist, amateur geologist.
And rock hound, and then my background in college was art, but also I studied, my minor was ancient art history. And the more I studied these ancient structures with this giant megalithic architecture, and frequently being attributed to people that are just completely incapable of building these things. And again and again and again, I kept seeing that. And when we finally start dating a little bit better, we realize that this stuff, the further back in time you go, the architecture gets better, not simpler, not more simple, it gets better, and the idea that these bronze tool wielding people, or even with copper tools, like in the people attributed to the pyramids, the Giza Plateau, are supposed to have just had copper tools. That's ridiculous. The pyramid is lined, the inside of the big chamber is lined with rose quartz, granite, a type of granite that you can bang a copper tool on granite all day and it's just going to crush the tool.
Yeah.
It's just going to damage your tool.
If you look at even like the theory of our solar system back in the 40s and 50s, it was the static state model of the solar system in the universe, and then that got replaced by the Big Bang. And now there's rumors that Big Bang may very well end up being replaced by string theory. Okay, so things evolve. People, as we get better with our technology, we're going to find more things. Like not too long ago, we didn't have LiDAR. We didn't have some of these things now. With satellite technology, we're finding out there that the Mayan civilization was a lot bigger and a lot more widespread than we ever thought, just even 20 years ago.
And then with my research, kind of on the separate vein, I was seeing all these flood myths, right? This guy named Fraser in the 1700s collected like 500 different flood myths and wrote a book about it. So I had read that book, and I knew about those 500 flood myths. But then hundreds and hundreds more were unearthed. We have something like 1,200 of them now, where completely separate cultures with the same story in their most ancient lore. God warned us and either told us to build a boat or go to high ground or dig underground, depending on where they lived, right?
Yep.
And you have some time, so get prepared and put your two to both of any animal you got, in your boat. But these stories repeated again and again. There's 1,200 stories like this all around the world.
And every single one, there was forewarning and foreknowledge. In other words, that
they had time. They had
like at least a year or two to do what they had to do, to build a boat or to build Derinkuyu in Turkey and the Anatolian.
And the fact that the ancient Sumerians of 6,000 years ago were actually quite advanced astronomers. The ancient Sumerians knew about the outer planets, for one thing.
Yeah.
I find it very interesting that they count them from the outside in.
Yeah.
Pluto is 1, Neptune is 2, Uranus is 3. Yeah, I found that fascinating. And the fact that they knew about them. We didn't finish discovering Pluto until,
I believe it was.
Yeah, it was not in the last century. So
32, 38, something like that.
I know. It's like, and then we demoted it from a planet and had to reinstate it as a planet in this time period too.
But it officially is back?
Yeah, it's officially a planet now.
Yeah.
But the ancient Sumerians had advanced astronomy. And it also shows in all of their architecture their ability to build right on cardinal points and be incredibly accurate. And their engineering feats are quite advanced for how old this civilization is.
Right.
We began surmising that perhaps the Great Flood really did happen. We started looking for a culprit, and there's the evidence of the Uccello horizon and the Younger Dryas boundaries of 13,000 years ago. 13,000 years ago, there was an extinction event that killed the Clovis people and the woolly mammoth and the mastodon and the dire wolf and the saber-toothed cat. And a bunch of animals died out at the same time, including the Clovis people of North America.
Some hung on a little bit, like the giant ground sloth.
But a lot of them were just wiped out at the same time, right? So then these layers of soil, they discovered nanodiamonds in the soil. And nanodiamonds only form during celestial impacts of some kind. When the meteor or asteroid or comet is coming through our atmosphere, it brings dust with it, and that dust becomes superheated and turns into these little tiny microscopic round diamonds called nanodiamonds. And since the discovery of the nanodiamonds, I think it was in the 86, I heard about it like 30 years ago, but since we heard about that, we realized that this is probably a celestial impact somewhere, a crater that we just haven't found yet, and it probably is the cause of the extinctions, those extinctions. The nanodiamond concentration was highest up near the Labrador Sea, and this is where we have to make a correction in our book. In 2016, a asteroid impact crater was found 500 miles away from the Labrador Sea in Greenland, and we thought, it's
in northern Greenland.
This is it. This is the crater.
Actually, the scientists that discovered it were saying they were surmising.
Yeah, they thought it was too.
They thought it was too.
So anyway, but that crater has been debunked as the 13,000-year-old one.
It's 58 million years.
But then, ironically, they found just on the other side of the Labrador Sea, 500 miles on the other side at Lake Superior, there's an impact, a comet impact, that has been dated to the right time period.
To 12,850 years
and
ago.
And that's the culprit that we're talking about in the book. So if you read our book, if you buy our book, wherever you see the word Hiawatha, swap it out with the Younger Dryas comet.
The Lake Superior Trench, yes.
Yes, unfortunately, we were wrong on that one.
I don't think you were wrong. You were going off of the information you had that scientists were giving you at that time. So you're just
what I've been saying.
keeping up with the
times, the changing, and so rather than we just have to take our lumps and say, yep, we were wrong, and now we're correcting it, and so that's what we're doing in public.
I don't feel all that lumpy about it.
Yeah, it's not really a big deal because the theories are the same. We think that prior to this impact, the human race was much more advanced than we previously knew. That we had a space program in place. We are the ones that put the structures on Mars, for instance, and the things that have been found on the moon, and the things that have been found on other places in our solar system, like one of the moons of Mars has Phobos has a structure on it as well. We think we were a spacefaring race that was surprised by this comet impact.
Completely surprised.
They had enough warning to warn everybody to build an ark, but otherwise they couldn't stop it. We think that we have like a deep impact scenario going here, where if you haven't seen the movie, folks, it's where the president sees a comet or an asteroid coming that's going to kill us all. Plan A is to get heroes to destroy this asteroid, but Plan B is to sink these underground arks deep underground, where we would put our technology and put our knowledge and put the flower of our humanity down there to survive the cataclysm. And they were going to be able to save the lives of, say, 50,000 people.
It was actually a couple million across several continents.
Each continent was putting in their own ark. And so they have like some time, right? They have about a year and a half before this thing is going to hit. They create these underground arks as a safety net to save humanity. And we think that this may be exactly what happened. So we are more advanced prior to Hiawatha impact. Some of us escape with our knowledge and our technology intact, possibly into other underground cities and underground bases. Then the rest of us poor schmoes on the surface died in droves, and the few survivors were shoved back into the Stone Age.
Well, there is a genetic bottleneck also too that happened around about that time too.
Our population drastically shrank.
Yeah, the population. Now we know because we've cracked the human genome and DNA and all that. We know that at one point about 13,000 years ago, we were reduced to a population based on the surface of about 10,000 individuals. Us 8 million that are currently on the Earth, we have survivors of about only 10,000, which is not that genetically diverse. When you're, as an example, telepathy may very well have been not that uncommon.
Yes, we think it's a human trait that's kind of atrophied in us, but has not atrophied in our cousins. We think that's why they're 13,000 years more advanced than us. That's why all of these different alien types, they are all bipedal hominids. One head, 2 arms, 2 legs. Their skeletal structures are almost always just like our own. We have more in common with the gray than we do with our closest other relative, the chimp.
The bonobos chimp.
They still have these short little legs. They can't fully stand upright. When they are frightened, they run on all fours. Even though they're genetically very close to us, they're a pretty far distance away from us.
Yeah, they're 99%. We're only 1% difference, but that makes a huge difference, when it comes down to it.
And people who see these gray aliens from even, say, 50 feet or so, have mistaken them for large children or very small adults from, say, 50 feet away.
50 to 100 feet, yes.
But watching them move, and if they were completely alien to us, they wouldn't move exactly like us. If they're moving like us, they have the same skeletal structure and the same musculature as we do. So we think they're much closer cousins. Possibly the celestial impact of 13,000 years ago maybe was the dividing point between us.
It wouldn't take more than a couple generations for, you get your grandchildren that grow up underneath and geothermally environments underneath the earth, maybe several hundred feet or maybe a couple thousand feet or whatever. That is their home. This is maybe the scary part, or maybe it's like where they go on their vacation to kind of like see what's going on the oceans or whatever. But it's like, humans are very adaptable. We're also very xenophobic, We also make terrible slaves. The Greys make perfect servants because they're basically non-emotional.
Right.
They're
And-
telepathic, but they're non-emotional.
And the Greys, as close as they are to us, it's the Nordics that are actually indistinguishable from human beings. They look just like really tall, really pale Swedes with blue eyes or green eyes. They're, like I said, indistinguishable from human beings.
Yeah.
We think be the kind of ones in charge, and that they are using the Greys as like a worker race of some kind, because the Greys, from abductee information, the Greys are completely emotionless. They sometimes cause their victims terrible fear and pain, and they don't care at all. They have no caring feelings, no emotion shown on their faces whatsoever.
They're very goal-driven.
They never stand around wondering what to do next. They always know what to do next. It's like, do this, do this, do this, do this. So they're almost
Partially robotic.
in some ways, although we know they are physical beings. But we think that maybe the Nordics did not mutate away from the human race as much as, say, the Greys did. And we think possibly a lot of our people escaped into space too, and are living on bases inside Mars or inside Phobos or inside our moon. So they really are extraterrestrials, but not coming from distant star systems through wormholes. We think they live here with us, and that's why they're so worried about our nuclear weapons and our nuclear power.
They have a lot of skin in the game. This is their home too.
Kill everybody, then we kill them too.
No, and when you say that we live on Mars and other places, you mean underground, just like you think that they do here.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Yeah, I was completely unaware that there were different types of aliens. If you can tell I'm a UFO, UAP novice on all of this stuff, this taught me a lot.
You go to these things like Contact in the Desert or Alien Con. There's a lot of there's a lot of stuff going on out there. There's supposedly like a feline aliens that come from a planet in the solar system that's like 26 light years away, and there's a lot of really wild rabbit hole stuff.
And a lot
I want a
Believe me,
cat alien.
There's a lot of rabbit hole stuff out there, believe me. But there's a lot of stuff that's absolutely no sense.
Right. So we don't think, like I say, that they're coming from distant star systems. We think that they're all close relatives to us. And we think that partly is proven because of how easily they can breed with us. They're interbreeding and making these hybrid races with us so easily. Frequently, the women are describing having sex. They're getting pregnant from sex. And if you're getting pregnant from sex, generally that means you're the same species as the creature you're having sex with.
It means you're the same species.
Or at least close enough to create a hybrid being.
Yeah,
I feel like I don't know how to word anything today, but you think that a lot of them are interbred with us. Do you think that there are any, I don't even know how to say it, like
aliens among us?
Full breed aliens still here, or do you think all of them have interbred?
Oh,
that's an excellent question.
Well, we don't really think they're aliens at all, in a way. No more than we all are, because our human race shows signs of being uplifted about 300,000 years ago. So we think aliens were involved back then, but 13,000 years ago, we think it's just essentially us that's separated and has mutated into these slightly different bipedal hominids.
Our current form, in other words, like Leslie was going to say, our current form, Homo sapiens sapien, has been on the planet at least for 120,000 years. Okay, so what did we do? We just all of a sudden just decided to get smart 13,000 years ago.
Yes, mainstream.
For 107,000 years, we were just sitting around, just not even inventing the wheel or
a house or anything useful.
Beings, we're restless and we're curious, we're inquisitive.
Yeah, so, mainstream archaeology would have us believe that we sat around for 107,000 years without making any real advancement, right? Just like Steve sound like the human race at all. We're a pretty industrious, curious people, good, bad, or indifferent, however you feel about the human race. We are a busy bunch, that like to make things and create things.
Oh, so we think, definitely.
Yeah, that we advanced,
and we have the
we
have the opposable thumb too. So
right, we went from the caves to the moon in 13,000 years. And we think that if this 107,000 years prior to the Younger Dryas comet, if they were intelligent this whole 107,000 years, that's 85,000 years more than our current society. They could have been 85,000 years ahead of us when Younger Dryas hit. And they've only improved that since then. So we think they're about 30,000 years ahead of us, technologically speaking.
Oh, about 13,000, right?
Well, 13,000, but they were more advanced than we are when the comet hit. And we're not talking a lot more advanced, But we know that they were building stuff on Mars. We know that because of the site at Cydonia, the pyramid sites at Cydonia. We think many tens of thousands of years ago we had bases
There's a
on
new
the
book that
surface of
just came
Mars.
out just as it's in the second printing. It's got 100 really nice satellite pictures of the monuments that have been found recently.
Structures on Mars.
just in the past 10, 20 years. And there's actually some pretty impressive things. You know, you can actually see pyramids and other stuff that don't exist in nature that you can actually see on the Martian surface. And these are actual satellite photographs, and some from the rovers like Discovery or whatever it is, the Explorer, whatever they're called. It's pretty interesting stuff. And also, to the backside of the moon, there's been satellites that have taken, tower structures and things such as that. There's in fact, even Jim Mars's book, which is called Alien Agenda. This guy worked with NASA, okay, and he talks at the beginning of the book about how when we've crashed different objects like the lunar escape module and whatever into the moon, how the moon would actually ring like a bell for hours.
Right, so it's possible our people, during this 107,000 years of advanced spacefaring in our own solar system, we think they may have partially hollowed out part of the moon. And maybe that's why it's ringing like a bell when it's hit by a lander,
Very, very odd. Nothing that anybody was expecting, for hours. This rings just like hitting a gong. Bong.
And it happened twice. We crashed two things into the moon, and both times there was this long resonant ring of the moon, I know it couldn't sound stranger if we were making this stuff up.
I didn't believe when I first read it that there's possibility the moon could be partially hollow. The depth of the craters on the moon, they're almost all the same depth, and they got like this little rebound in the center, like you get like if something hits and then it rebounds like it's hitting a piece of metal. So there's like this.
And even you look at the seas that are supposed to be big, giant crater impact zones, right? They actually are convexed outward. They're not concave down like craters would be. They're convexed out. So it's almost like the surface of the moon, at least this part of the moon where we were crashed into it, seems like it might have a big hollowed out section below it. Somehow.
Yeah, we've crashed into two different sections of the moon. It wasn't the same section.
So there's at least two of these sections that are partly hollowed out.
It's something that you can't argue with. With what the facts and the data showed. I mean, this is what happened. It wasn't like somebody was making it up.
And believe me,
it's odd. It was odd for me to think about it in the first place that the moon might be at least partially hollow.
And believe me, as we're researching this stuff and finding out one bizarre fact after the next, and I'm saying to myself, oh my God, I have to actually report on, this a hybrid alien breeding program, in this book. That's something I was like, oh my God, I have to really delve into this and report on it. Couldn't seem stranger to me than if I had made it up as a fictional story. But these 1,100 women that Jacobs had regressed, all of their stories are almost identical.
And Leslie, having been a journalist for 18 years, really piqued her curiosity as far as reporting. So
there's reports of the Nordic aliens at one point meeting with President Eisenhower. Admittedly, we don't have a lot of firm evidence on this, but there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that points to it possibly being true. And we believe that the big push for that meeting for the Nordics was that they wanted us to denuclearize. They wanted us to give up our nuclear weapons. And we refused. Ever since then, we did make a pact with them to keep the secret of their existence, to allow for the abductions to continue, because we couldn't stop them anyway. And but they would share their technology with us.
A little bit of their
dribs and drabs of their technology with us. So we believe that this meeting really did take place, and that is why they are so concerned about our nuclear weapons. They're literally spending huge resources devoted to following all of the military maneuvers all around the world, keeping tabs on our nuclear weapons everywhere they go all around the world. And we know that they can disarm them. You read in the book about the Malmstrom incident.
In Montana, 1966.
In Montana. Yeah,
yes.
They actually, this big UFO hovered right outside the gates, and then one after another, all of the nuclear warheads were taken offline, all 10 of them. And they were all on separate systems, too.
Right,
so,
for security.
It would have been a difficult hack no matter what. But they were able, with no trouble at all, they were able to take all of them down offline. And this was a definite message that they were sending to us. that we can disable your stuff whenever we want to.
Yeah, they've done it to the Russians and the British too. So
the last episode I actually recorded was my first UFO episode, or UAP, I don't know. But it was the Kecksburg incident.
Yes,
where,
the Kecksburg. Mm-hmm.
The man from Film Joe podcast came on and he told me that story, which blew my mind. And we were talking about how they were taking the power, but we chopped it up to that their Apple phones were dead and all the aliens were above it charging their phones.
That was the Bell incident, right? It looked like a
Bell.
Bell.
Yeah, that was crazy.
That was a wild one.
He told me they were going to come back together and I still didn't see it. He told me the story and at the end my jaw was just on the ground. I was like, wow, that is and so insane. Everything about it.
Tried to very only rarely mentioned sightings by a single individual or one or two people. I tried to focus mainly on the mass sightings,
Yep.
Because, one person could be lying, but when 300 people call the cops and say there's a UFO in my backyard,
Yeah, no, it definitely builds credibility.
I missed one in the book, and I'm definitely going to write it in
the Michigan
incident. The Michigan one I really like. I missed it when I first was writing the book, but we're definitely going to include it in the second one. It was exactly that. 300 people called the cops saying that UFOs were flying over the city and then over the lake. There was a National Radar Service station right on the east coast of Lake Michigan, and this guy tracked them for hours, and these craft were moving. He tracked them on radar at 72,000 miles per hour. And that's when I realized that my 20,000 is not wrong. It's, we know that they can move at least that, easily, because they've been tracked even. And of course, he ended
up having to move. He basically got harassed and he lost his job.
Yeah.
The airport didn't want to believe it. They didn't want to hear anything about it. So
part of the whole thing with Eisenhower and the government trying to keep the secret was this Project Blue Book that they established back then, and it was they had a manual for how to deal with mass sightings. The first thing they would do is they would send agents out, these men in black, just like the movie, and these men in black would show up at a small town where there'd been a mass sighting, and they would interview everybody who saw something and get all the information and knowledge for themselves.
Collect evidence.
Then they would start these ridicule campaigns. They would make fun of it in the media. They had these campaigns where they would ridicule the people as these people are crazy in that town or stuff like that. And frequently that would shut people up, just the embarrassment alone. Mm-hmm. But then when that wouldn't work, then they would actually threaten their lives. This happened a lot at Roswell.
Would be intimidation first. They would threaten.
Then intimidation. Yeah. First it's ridicule, then intimidation, and then actual consequences. They'll actually try and get you fired from your job, or some sort of bad thing happen to you, get you evicted, or get you run out of town or something. And then, of course, we think in some cases they just resort to murdering the witness to keep them quiet.
When people just won't shut up, like James Forrestal, who was on the original MJ-12.
He wouldn't shut up, and then
he was Secretary of State for Truman.
And as you know, reading the book, that there's two other murders that we talk about in the book as well.
Yeah.
So you think the aliens are the Men in Black, or at least hybrid versions? Because in a lot of stories that I do, they talk about, like in the Mothman, people reported transparent-esque skin.
Well, in most of the Men in Black reports that I heard, they were just men dressed in black suits and black hats with no governmental insignia of any kind. They wouldn't show any identification or anything. We believe they were NSA agents because the NSA was formed right around the same time as Project Blue Book was established. And we think that was to create the secretive agents that they needed to be able to operate, behind the scenes. Blanket organization for all of this. To fall underneath.
They have some type of a clearance or something, because they've been reported to showing up on Navy ships where multiple sailers have seen
admirals.
USOs come up out of the ocean and hover around the ship. They've even taken a video of it too, but as soon as they pull into port, these two men in black will show up out of nowhere. They'll be there, go see the captain of the ship, who, he's a captain. He's a pretty high up there, commissioned officer, and the captain just turns everything over.
Right.
They seem to also be able to get to these sites when things are happening very quickly.
Yeah.
Being monitored 24/7, they seem to be able to show up like within 24 hours.
Right.
It's amazing. And some have been reported as looking more mechanical in the way they move, but generally speaking, what we think they are is mostly is that they are NSA agents.
We can't be sure that they aren't part of this hybrid breeding program. We
Yeah,
think
we can't
that
be sure about that.
this hybrid breeding program is also sort of happening to reintegrate with us, but we think it's also a way of infiltrating us and possibly trying to change us from within and get to their ultimate goal, which is that we denuclearize and we stop holding a loaded gun to all of our collective
And
heads.
start treating the planet better, because we ought to do that anyway.
Right.
So
Stop
yeah,
polluting.
they're doing a pretty poor job of it, if you ask me. They're taking their time. So yeah, I think we're kind of an experiment that kind of got out of control. I think that they didn't expect us to be 8 billion people or whatnot. I think that maybe they hoped that their influence, they wouldn't have to show their hand, and I think they don't want to show their hand. We barely get along with each other as it, and so now you introduce like, oh yeah, we've been down here for 13,000 years, and we are just more advanced.
Just way more advanced.
And by the way,
you barbarians.
We took your
and
uncle.
we're like the bunnies up top.
Yeah. By the way, we took your Uncle Fred. If you didn't want to know what happened to him, we took him a couple of generations ago.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, we've also been slaughtering your cattle.
Your cattle,
and we've been taking their blood and their eyes. So yeah, we've been the ones who've been doing the cattle mutilations. And this different religions are going to, and different people are going to react to things just like we saw in 1938 with War of the Worlds, that
people freaked out.
People just freaked out. And I think we would maybe freak out a little bit less now, because we've had movies like Star Wars and the Star Trek series, and we're kind of getting a little desensitized.
I think that's a lot of the media over these many 80 years or so have been slowly but surely getting us indoctrinated to the idea of aliens and the idea of extraterrestrials, so that we won't be quite as knocked over when the disclosure finally does come, if it ever does.
Well, they pretty much did. They admitted that there are aliens.
Yep.
That they do exist.
Yep.
They're just like slowly leaking it out. I think back to the old podcast, the Kecksburg, Joe said that they're doing like a soft launch, trying to like ease us into it, as to not make us like go insane by all this information at once, because your reality will just be gone.
Yeah,
it changed before Luis Elizondo released the Go Fast, Gimbal, and Tic Tac videos in 2017 to the New York Times. Before that day, every single UFO sighting, the government played it down as nothing. It was swamp gas. It was a weather balloon. It was mass hysteria. It was anything but these real UFOs that they knew were happening. Then suddenly, Luis Elizondo released all this video and a lot of information to the New York Times. It was a huge article. And then the Department of Defense shocked us all. We thought they were just going to deny it, like they always did for 80 years. And then, oh no, this phenomenon is real.
Golly gee, we don't know what they are, but
we don't
real.
know what they are, but that sure is a real phenomenon being picked up by our pilots. And of course, they're still lying to us, because they know what it is. They have the ships. They have the crashed ships and the dead alien bodies, and maybe even some live ones. We heard reports of actual alien survivors, gray alien survivors alive at Area 51 and later in Area 52.
There's also been diplomats and like Russians and Chinese that have been caught on hot mics, basically saying, yeah, they're here, and
they are infiltrating our numbers.
You'd be surprised how many of them are walking amongst us right now. I think I actually met one accidentally one day in about 35 years ago, and just didn't move or didn't act
quite right.
It was just very, very odd. Much taller than me, and just had more mechanical movements, and just eyes weren't quite right. And yeah, I probably have met, maybe you've even met some that you just didn't realize that they're basically us, really, just a different version of us. They're not using cloaking devices where they have to like hit a button and become human. They're literally us. So
did you speak to this one that you thought, or it just gave you like an uncanny valley feeling?
No, we were at Follow Your Heart health food store, and had some lunch, and he was just like waiting at the checkout stand, and we started talking about herbs, because I was a state licensed acupuncturist and Chinese herbalist for 20 years, and got talking to him, and just his movements and the way he was I'm pretty intuitive myself, and pretty much I can kind of feel people. And when you're an acupuncturist, you literally have to evaluate the whole body when you're treating a person. You look at everything from the tongue to the eyes to the way they smell, and definitely palpate the body. So I could just tell this guy is really just
not quite right.
Not quite right. This is well before we decided to write a book.
Was he very pale?
he stuck out in my mind. He made an impression on me even to this day. I mean, I always thought,
Right.
man, I think I've met somebody who just really isn't quite from around here, you know. Yeah,
His
you know,
acting was a little off.
everything from the movements to the speech, yes. And it wasn't like he was, you know, from a different country. I met a person where, like they say, when a person walks in the room, all the heads turn. It's like their energy precedes them, kind of thing. This is the
Yeah.
type of guy that he just had this thing about him that was just, that's why we remember him. You know, of all the millions of people I've met, I remember him. Anyway, food for thought.
If everything was true, do you think it would be beneficial for all this to come out, or do you think it's better that the government keeps it under wraps?
For now, under wraps. Got all
I think
the
Steve's
stuff.
right. I think all the stock markets would crash at the same time, and all the religions all their heads would explode. And
Apart from maybe the Buddhists and some of the ones that practice meditation a lot, or the American Indians, they call them our star
yeah,
brothers.
they've been seeing them for thousands of
They
years.
don't really
I know,
have the
they
same
just
problems.
accept it. They're like, oh, that's
Yeah.
Ralph, he's going to the store. Like, they're
Yeah.
just fine with
Right,
it.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
it's your viewpoint. Say we have a lot of problems. You know, look at all the political nonsense we have going on right now. Just that alone, and then you get to different countries and different languages. I mean, things can get such mistranslations are so common. A good movie to watch is Arrival. If you ever get a chance, I watched that as a sci-fi one.
Yeah, that's a great
And
sci-fi.
and talk
Recommend it.
about mistranslation. It has a lot to do. I won't give away the movie at all, but
Right.
it has a lot to do. Yeah, okay. Translation, as far as what is the message they're trying to get across to us? Are they threatening us, or trying to show they're trying to help? And so, yeah, if you misinterpret a symbol to mean one thing, it can mean nuclear war versus having everybody work together for a common purpose.
Right.
But Arrival is actually worth watching.
One of the premises where we started with our book, we had a copy of Admiral Byrd's diary from way back. Steve had a copy
Yeah, I
of
had
it
a
from years
original
ago.
one, 92.
And this particular story, we started to look at it like, what if these people are really there? And what if Admiral Byrd's encounter was real? And these creatures that live under the ice sheet of Antarctica, they're named the Ariani. He said they were men. They looked like Caucasian, pale, white-skinned, tall blonde-haired men.
Tall, silvery hair, yeah.
He said they spoke to an English by a man, but he had like a German or Nordic, Germanic kind of accent, he said.
They kept calling him
My son.
My son.
Yeah. He said basically, yes, we're really here. We've been here for thousands of years. We mostly stay out of the business of your people and stay out of your barbaric wars. Essentially, you guys are barbarians, and we try and stay above you and separate from you.
Above, while below.
But since you have discovered nuclear weapons, we must now intervene. This goes a long way to explaining why they're monitoring our nuclear weapons everywhere they go, right? Also, they explained that, well, we're going to also take the flower of your race for safekeeping here, just in case you destroy yourself. So that goes a long way to explaining the abduction phenomenon, right? Like maybe they're taking us to protect ourselves in case we do blow ourselves up. But it also goes a long way to explaining why they're seen so often, if they're living here with us, and why they're abducting Caucasian people. We think perhaps that their race, living underground for thousands of years, may become less viable and might need regular infusions from surface-dwelling people.
And if you actually look at the mythos of the vampire and the succubus and the incubus, the crossover, the parallel is almost exact. They come in the night. They are very powerful.
They're pale.
They're pale. They paralyze you. They take your genetic material, sometimes repeatedly, and they can change form, or they can manipulate matter. So when you look at it, and the succubus and the incubus are
that's like the
basically
abduction phenomenon where they're actually impregnating people.
Yeah, impregnating people, or taking
the,
semen.
It has the sexual component to it
so
more.
there's a big crossover there to be found. It's just, it's really interesting. It's just the terminology changes, but the same thing is happening.
One hard little kernel of evidence that I really like. This fella, he was an Australian fella. He woke up in the middle of the night one time. A woman was straddling him in his bed. He was paralyzed and he could not move. She put her hand on her stomach and pointed to the sky. And her face wasn't quite all the way human, he said. The eyes were too large, the cheeks were too pointy, the chin too narrow, it came to a narrow point. and there was another woman in the room who was looked more oriental to him. Anyway, these women have their way with him. They have sex with him while he's paralyzed, and then the next morning wakes up and finds a blonde hair in bed, and he takes this hair to be studied. And first of all, it's not like any human hair that's ever been discovered. It's clear, like a fishing line, completely clear, but genetically it did test as human. It tested, they didn't have a follicle, but they got the mitochondrial DNA from it, and the DNA tested as really bizarre human origin. It was Gaelic and Basque, and also a rare form of Chinese person that only makes up about 1% of the population, a kind of a branch of the Chinese population. It tested as human, but was unlike any human hair that had ever been seen before because it was clear. Even albinos do not have clear hair. They have white hair. So it's like a human has mutated to have different hair, different enough that it's never been seen before.
There are drips and drabs of actual physical evidence, and it's becoming more common. And we have, if we had more time, we could go into the cattle mutilation thing too. But it's also same thing. They're taking all the DNA, they're taking all the blood. Just cattle. It's also with horses and goats
sheep
and the domesticated animals.
Mostly domesticated. But once in a while there's exceptions like foxes, and there was even a sperm whale was found.
An orca.
I'm sorry, a killer whale rather was found inland, like hundreds of miles inland, and treated just like they do with the cattle mutilations, just mutilated and all the blood removed and the sex organs removed and the tongue and the eye.
Yep.
The whole thing is fascinating. Like I said, I go into it from more of a skeptical point of view. I do believe there's something. I just don't know what.
Right.
And your book touches on everything. The giants.
Oh, yes.
Unrealistic advancements they had in mechanical technology back then. Like, it's just a fascinating book.
Thank you, dear. Thank you so much.
You want to plug the book, Leslie?
Oh, yeah, let's plug it one more time. It's called Who They Are and What They're Up To by Leslie and Stephen Shaw. And we are available on Amazon for most people. That's the best way to order the book. And then we're also available on Ingram. I know bookstores prefer Ingram. We're on Instagram. We're trying to make a very interesting page. One at a time, I'm putting up all of Stephen's bizarre family stories, one after another in a series, all the abductions in another series, and then also anybody who shares their experiences with us will make a video about it and try and so we'd be happy to hear, we'd love to hear people's experiences. We're particularly interested in Bigfoot experiences that also have a UFO component to them. If anyone has seen Bigfoot disappear into a bright light, we'd really like to hear all about that, for instance. Oh, and the handle of that, I'm sorry, is at Instagram is leslie.shaw.author, and we're also on Facebook at the same handle. And we have a website, whotheyarebook.com.
Fantastic.
Thanks,
I'm like right in the hot spot. I actually just did for my Patreon only. I did the Bridgewater Triangle, and I live right by there. And there's a bunch of Bigfoot and UFO stuff in there.
Oh, you're at the Bridgewater Triangle? Yeah, that was a lot of cool. That was one of the ones where a fireball went across the whole state, like right across the state, right? So,
yeah, I have to do a part two because I didn't fit it all in there, but I only put in some of the UFO stuff, but there's ones with Ronald Reagan. There's all these that I have to put in the second one. There's like a lot more.
Yeah.
And they have what is it called? The Bigfoot team. Instead of Massachusetts, it's Squatchachusetts is the name of the group that keeps all of the sightings, the interactions with Bigfoot.
Oh, I got to write that down.
It's fantastic. Squatchachusetts. It's very hard to say.
Squatchachusetts.
I'm going to find them online. That'll be fun. Thank you.
Yeah. But thank you guys so much for coming on. You blew my mind.
Thank you for letting us prattle on.
Anyone out there, thank you in advance if you buy the book. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, this was my first UFO book read. Because most of them I don't know. They just never really interest me because it's purely on first-hand accounts. And you intertwine all the factual evidence and historical facts in there. That's what I like. I like to hear, like, not really fantasy, first-hand accounts and then, like, some theories and then facts. That's what grabs me.
A lot of the UFO books that we've read, they focus specifically on an event and delve into it in detail, and that's wonderful, but it's definitely not what our book is about. It's trying to look at the whole phenomenon as a big umbrella over the whole thing and how it connects.
Yeah, it gives some more clarity to it, and also to help people to, them to draw their own conclusions. Actually, Leslie figuring out just how to write the book, that was one of the hardest parts as far as how to present the evidence. And when we decided to put my stuff and my family stuff in there, it really helped it to gel.
Yeah.
And decided to make that as part of the preface, to give people the general feeling that we're not just approaching it these are a bunch of facts and we're going to just present them, and made very dryly like a lot of books do, but made it more of a personal touch. That's what I thought was very important to the book.
And it makes it where the layman can pick it up too, because we do start with sort of a crash UFO 101 course, I call it, in chapter 1, where you just get...
Which I needed.
Yeah, right. Well, exactly. For people who know all about it, maybe they'll still find something they haven't heard of. But people who knew nothing about UFOs, you have to give them some sort of a frame of reference before you can even start talking about your theories,
Yeah, and I won't say how you ended the book, but that's probably my favorite part of the whole book. It's the very end.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you need more content or just want to help support the podcast, head on over to patreon.com and search Ouch, Was That a Ghost? If you need some snazzy merch, you can find it at crowdmade.com by searching Ouch, Was That a Ghost? If you have a story you'd like to share, you can email it to ouchwasthataghost@yahoo.com. You can also find us on Facebook and all the other social media platforms under Ouch, Was That a Ghost?
Help me.
All links can also be found on ouchwasthataghost.com.